Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Before we really get into the thick of it today, I just want to remind you to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. We've got so much great content there, and we always love to hear your thoughts, so please drop a comment and let us know your opinions on today's topic.
Yeah, definitely get involved in the comments. We really want to know what you think about this one because it is, well, it's a massive story.
It really is. So think about this. You look at a broken bone on an X-ray, right? And it's black and white. Completely binary. The fracture is either there or it isn't. But when a multi-million-dollar sports dynasty kind of collapses, that X-ray is entirely blurry.
Oh, absolutely. It's never just one simple thing.
Right. And today, we are looking at a masterclass in how not to diagnose a failure. You've got this fascinating and, frankly, pretty scathing critique of sports leadership. We're looking at the English Rugby Football Union, or the RFU.
Which is just a colossal organization.
Right. And following England's worst ever performance in the Six Nations, which, is a massive annual tournament between Europe's top rugby powers, they ended up with this dismal fifth-place finish in the 2026 campaign. And in response, the RFU launched this sweeping, massive organizational review.
Yeah, and to really understand the gravity here, you have to look at the scale of the English rugby machine.
Yeah.
A fifth-place finish for a team with England's vast financial resources, their player pool, all that history. It isn't just a bad day at the office, it's an institutional earthquake.
Wow, an earthquake. That's a good way to put it.
I mean, it really is the kind of historic collapse that sends shockwaves all the way up to the boardroom. It demands immediate answers.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
Because the RFU does what any massive corporate entity does when faced with a crisis, right? They commissioned a highly publicized, very comprehensive review. And then 2 months later, the RFU's chief executive, Bill Sweeney, steps up to the microphone, calls the findings thorough and honest, and delivers the big headline. Head coach Steve Borthwick is keeping his job. He's officially back to stay on through the 2027 Rugby World Cup.
So on paper, that reads like a definitive vote of confidence. I mean, the bureaucratic machine did its job. They paused, they evaluated the leadership during a crisis, and they concluded, hey, the man at the helm is still the right person.
Yeah, but that is the exact assumption that Sir Clive Woodward just completely dismantles in our source material today. And I love how he approaches this. For you listening, Woodward isn't just some armchair critic. He is a former World Cup winning head coach for England.
Right. He actually knows the sheer pressure of that specific environment intimately.
Exactly. And his critique of the RFU's review process is just blistering. He actually stated that the bureaucratic response to this failure was more disappointing than the fifth-place finish itself. He called the outcome as predictable as it was disappointing.
Which forces us to look past just the result of the review and analyze the actual mechanics of the process. What's fascinating here is how Woodward attacked the fundamental concept of leadership capital and timing.
Timing is everything, right?
It really is. His core argument is that Bill Sweeney and the executives, they should already have their fingers on the pulse of their own organization. If you are ultimately going to retain Steve Borthwick, the only effective move is to step in front of the cameras immediately after that final defeat to France and publicly throw your full support behind him.
You extinguish the fire before it spread.
Exactly.
You don't wait. But instead, they opted for this highly publicized 2-month probe. And just think about the mechanics of paralysis this creates. Like, imagine you are leading a mid-sized company and you've just delivered a brutally bad quarter.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Revenue is down, your team is exhausted. Instead of the board stepping in and either firing you or backing you right there, they announced this comprehensive independent audit of your leadership that will take 60 days.
So you're just sitting there.
Yes. For 2 solid months, auditors are combing through your decisions, whispers are echoing through the break room. Every single employee is walking on eggshells. You are technically still the boss, but your authority is completely frozen.
Because nobody knows if you'll even have a job next Tuesday.
Exactly. So when the board finally emerges after 2 agonizing months and says, great news, you're keeping your job, it doesn't matter. The trial itself was the punishment. The damage to your credibility is already done. Doesn't a review like this just completely undermine the leader's authority?
It absolutely does. What's fascinating here is how that corporate paralysis translates directly to an elite sports environment. Because in sports, authority and belief are everything.
Yeah, you have to have the locker room.
Right. Woodward argues the RFU artificially engineered a massive vacuum of confidence. Borthwick was left twisting in the wind while the union publicly questioned his competence. And This is great. Woodward offers a very specific structural solution.
Oh, the director of rugby thing.
Yes. He argues that modern sports organizations absolutely require a director of rugby. This person acts as the direct manager to the head coach, reporting straight to the board of directors.
But wait, why does inserting another layer of management fix a bureaucracy problem? Doesn't that just add, I don't know, more red tape?
It's a great question, but a director of rugby isn't just another suit in the boardroom. They are a vital bridge. They act as the real-time translator between the slow language of the executives and the rapid, tactical language of the coaching staff.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, if you have a director who is living and breathing the high-performance environment every single day, watching training, sitting in meetings, you don't need a 2-month external probe. You already possess the context. That director can walk into the boardroom on Monday morning and explain exactly why the plan failed against France.
That makes so much sense. It replaces panic-driven audits with continuous evaluation. Really quick, before we talk about what this massive 2-month review actually uncovered, please take a second to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. We genuinely love reading your comments and opinions on these deep dives.
Yes, definitely do that.
So, okay, if this review took 2 agonizing months and inflicted all this collateral damage on the coach, you would assume the trade-off was worth it, right?
You would hope so.
Like, you would assume these independent evaluators dug deep and uncovered some incredibly complex tactical flaw. What did they actually find after 60 days?
Well, the official findings concluded that England's performance was undermined by, and I'm quoting the source here, discipline, execution of opportunities, and making the most of key moments.
Wow. Woodward literally laughed at that, didn't he?
He did. He pointed out that every single person watching the tournament on their TV back in February could see that the team lacked discipline. He openly asked what on earth they had been talking about for 2 months to arrive at something that basic.
It reads like a generated list of sports cliches.
It totally lacks any actionable depth.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Let me play devil's advocate for a second. If you don't put this down on paper in a formal review, aren't you just running a massive organization purely on vibes? Don't you need an official post-mortem to document the failures, no matter how obvious, just to create a roadmap?
I hear what you're saying, but if we connect this to the bigger picture of how high-performance environments actually function, we uncover the most critical part of Woodward's philosophy. He operates on the principle that high performance is an evolution. The fundamental flaw of the institutional postmortem is that the boardroom moves at the glacial speed of corporate bureaucracy, while the pitch moves at the blistering speed of elite sport. By the time you formally diagnosed yesterday's illness, the patient is already fighting a completely different disease.
Oh, that's wild. Walk me through the mechanics of that. Why does the game move so fast that a 2-month review becomes obsolete?
Well, think about the tactical reality. This review spent 2 months dissecting a Six Nations tournament played in the cold European spring, right? But England's very next challenge is a July tour in South Africa, playing the Springboks.
And that's a completely different game.
Entirely. The Springboks play a bruising, highly physical style in a completely different climate and altitude. The tactical solutions you needed to beat France in March are entirely different from the weapons you need to survive South Africa in July.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. So the autopsy of the Six Nations might be factually accurate, but it's completely useless for the current market. It's like a tech company taking 6 months to meticulously analyze why their last smartphone failed. And by the time they publish the report, the entire global market has moved on to a new operating system.
That is the exact mechanism of failure Woodward is highlighting. He boldly labels the practice of conducting these prolonged, backward-looking reviews after every major campaign as completely ineffective.
So the timeline is damaging, the findings are painfully obvious, and the structural premise is flawed. But we haven't even touched on the most incendiary part of Woodward's critique. Let's pivot to the methodology of the review itself. Specifically, who was pointing the fingers?
Yes, the sourcing of the feedback.
Right, so the RFU utilized external, independent contributors to conduct this review. They interviewed players, coaching staff, analysts. But here's the critical detail. All of these external evaluators were completely anonymous. They were allowed to pass judgment on the entire organization without ever revealing their identities. Woodward stated he was genuinely embarrassed for these people. He noted that the RFU loves to commission these reviews specifically because they, quote, offer zero accountability.
This raises an important question about the asymmetry of risk in high-stakes environments, because accountability is the absolute currency of elite sports.
Totally. I mean, think about the day-to-day reality for Borthwick or his players. They are on the absolute front lines. When a player makes a critical error, they don't get to hide. They have to stand in front of a wall of TV cameras within minutes of the final whistle.
And their decisions are ruthlessly pulled apart in the Monday newspapers.
Exactly. The players put their actual physical health on the line, enduring the brutal reality of a rugby scrum, while millions of fans dissect their every move. Their names and their personal reputations are permanently attached to the failure.
Now compare that visceral public vulnerability to the reality of the anonymous consultant. The players and coaches are taking massive personal risks. The evaluators are taking absolutely none.
It has to be incredibly toxic for team morale. How toxic is it when the people deciding your livelihood hide in the shadows? You take 100% of the public heat and they take zero.
Right. Woodward asks a very direct question. How can these anonymous contributors act as judge, jury, and possible executioner without putting their names to their analysis? It exposes a deep hypocrisy. If you want to claim the title of a high-performance expert, you must be willing to attach your own professional reputation to your opinions. You need skin in the game.
But, it's often argued by HR departments that anonymity is the only way to get honest feedback. The theory is that if you remove the fear of reprisal, people will finally tell you the truth about a toxic manager.
And Woodward fiercely rejects that premise in an elite context. He argues that anonymity doesn't breed honesty, it breeds cowardice. It creates an environment where individuals can take consequence-free shots at the coaching staff. If you have a legitimate critique, true leadership demands that you stand up in the light of day, present your evidence, and defend your position.
Yeah, it's the difference between standing up in a boardroom and saying, here is the data, I stake my reputation on this, versus slipping a nasty note into a suggestion box and walking away.
Exactly. One requires immense professional courage. The other is just institutional sniping. And Woodward's overarching point is that you cannot build a unified, high-performing team in a haunted house.
A haunted house, that is the perfect way to phrase it.
Right. If the players and coaches are accountable for every dropped ball, the administration must be equally accountable for their evaluations. When you institutionalize anonymous feedback, you build a culture of profound mistrust. The coaches know they're being judged by ghosts.
It creates a deeply flawed, two-tiered system of pressure. Maximum crushing pressure for the people on the pitch, zero pressure for the boardroom. It's a profound critique. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've spent this time deep in the world of elite English rugby. But if you strip away the sports jerseys, this dynamic translates directly into almost every professional environment.
Oh, 100%.
Whether you are leading a creative team, managing an engineering project, or just trying to navigate feedback in your own career, this entire saga is a masterclass in how not to conduct a postmortem. It challenges you to look at your own workplace. When things go wrong, do your leaders step into the light and share the accountability? Or do they hide behind anonymous surveys while the front lines take the hit? And hey, we really want to hear your experiences with this, so be sure to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description and let us know your thoughts.
It fundamentally forces us to reevaluate the tools we use to measure success and failure. If anonymous feedback ultimately breeds a culture of zero accountability, at what point do these massive, supposedly thorough and honest reviews stop being a tool for improvement?
Yeah. When do they become the problem?
Exactly. At what point do they become the exact mechanism that destroys a team's trust? When we go looking for that clean x-ray of what went wrong, we have to be incredibly careful that the diagnostic machine doesn't do significantly more damage than the original injury itself.
The diagnostic process can absolutely be just as dangerous as the disease. What a brilliant breakdown. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.